It is time now for today's Big Three, and our topics: mistrial, coming out, and this week's must-read. So let's bring in my Big Three panel. Jason Johnson, a professor of political science and communications at Harem College and politics editor at The Source. Jimmy Williams, an MSNBC contributor, and Robert Traynham, an MSNBC contributor and former Bush-Cheney senior advisor. Hi, guys. Good to see you all.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Hello there.
So, Jason, I'll begin with you here. Was Michael Dunn's mistrial on the murder charge just a failure of the prosecution to get a conviction, or do you see a bigger societal issue at play here?
It's both. It's an absolute failure by Angela Corey, and it's racism, plain and simple. You know, if a group of college kids drove next to me playing One Direction much louder than I wanted to hear it and I shot at them, I'd be in jail right now. There's absolutely no way that we can believe that race did not play a role in this jury being hung up because of a belief that young black men are inherently dangerous. So I think on the one hand, we need to evaluate whether or not Angela Corey needs to get reelected in 2016. And on the other hand, we have to look at racism and how that plays a role in our justice system.
Are you going to at all give Angela Corey a break because she says she's going to retry this case for the most serious charge here of first-degree murder? She's going to talk to the jurors and find out what exactly prevented them from being able to come to an agreement?
I mean, you don't get a second chance to make a bad first impression again. Okay, she screwed up in the Zimmerman trial. She screwed up in this trial. I think she should be removed in 2016.
Okay. Hey, Jimmy, the protesters outside the courthouse last night, they were calling for her removal. And again, you know, the point has been made. She was special prosecutor for George Zimmerman. Has the state mishandled these highly sensitive cases, or do you need to focus on the word sensitive?
Well, I mean, listen, this is a tricky issue. I agree with everything that he just said, which is this is purely about race. There's no one that can legitimately argue that a jury gets hung up. And you have to declare a mistrial when someone shoots someone else to death. And so this is a state law, right? I mean, so we're having a conversation on a national political stage about varying state laws. That's the problem here. If, in fact, stand your ground and some of these other weird things that were being pushed by the NRA weren't on the books in Florida and in other states, then that guy would have been convicted of murder. And he would go to jail for the rest of his life. He's probably going to go to jail for the rest of his life anyway. But I can't tell you about Florida's laws per se, except that they give people an easy opt-out. And that's what's happened now twice in the state of Florida.
So, Robert, let's take a situation where if Michael Dunn had not had a gun, it might have only escalated to some sort of a fist fight, but he did have a gun, and now someone is dead. So those facts are not debated at all. What do you say to those who argue that this is a clear example of why we need much stricter gun laws?
Well, you know, that's an interesting point. And, you know, I think the missing link here, I agree with everything that Jimmy and the other guests had said a few moments ago, but I think it's a bigger issue about what the jury thinks. I mean, I think it's very telling that they have not communicated to the public in terms of what their thinking really is. And it seems like that Mr. Dunn actually had the gun legally. At least that's what I read. I don't know if that's actually true or not. So I don't know if this is really a question about gun control per se, and more about what Jimmy mentioned a few moments ago in the context of state law.
But bigger picture here, I got to tell you, I had Reverend Al Sharpton. He was on in the last hour, and he said what this does speak to is what Jason was saying, that this is very much an issue of race in this society. I mean, how do we take this lesson? How do we move the ball forward and do something good from all this? Jimmy, I mean, do you have an idea on that?
Well, listen, you know, we need to have a serious conversation about race. The president has addressed this issue. Congress has done nothing on this issue. And so all this is left to the states to sort of have their varying laws on the books. But at the end of the day, another white guy shot another black kid. That's what's happened here, and killed him, by the way. And what was the kid doing? He was playing loud music. So what? You know, if you don't like it, roll your windows up. And what was Trayvon Martin doing? Walking down the street in his own neighborhood. These are kids that are just they're not breaking any laws per se. And when you have a society, whether it's a white society or a black society or a Latino society, that thinks that it can play the law itself, then you have a bigger problem. And that's why we have to have a conversation, again, a serious conversation about how race does play into these laws.
And Jason, you want to chime in here?
Yeah, it's really simple. We need to look at jury selection. I mean, this is the second time we're not looking at a jury of his peers here. And I think we need to look at the demographics of jury selection. I think we need to look at the people who are actually prosecuting this case. And we also have to look at gun laws. I mean, there are so many different examples where this should not only never have happened, but this is an absolute failure on the part of the state. And I think we need to have a top-to-bottom reevaluation, just like we did after OJ, just like we have after Zimmerman. Anytime justice hasn't been served, we need to look at the system system that we're all living under.
Okay, let's move on to our next topic, guys, and that is coming out. Robert, we had actress Ellen Page, who gave a speech at a human rights campaign event on Friday in which she announced that she is gay. Let's all take a listen.
And I am here today because I am gay. And because maybe I can make a difference to help others have an easier and more hopeful time. Regardless, for me, I feel a personal obligation and a social responsibility.
You know, Robert, what's interesting is this obligation that she mentioned. Do prominent people have a social responsibility to come out?
A social responsibility, that's an interesting question. I really think it depends on their own compass and where they are in their life. I can tell you, as a gay American, when I heard that Ellen DeGeneres came out in the mid-1990s, that was a huge, huge deal, not only for society overall, but it said, you know what, listen, if this woman has the courage to come out of the closet, maybe I can too. So, you know, from a personal perspective, I will say that prominent individuals, whether they are on the TV screen, whether they're on the football field, whether in the business room or whatever the case may be, when they do, in fact, comes out, it makes it just that much easier for that kid in the urban areas, in the inner city, for that kid in the rural areas, for that kid that grew up in a very conservative household, lowercase c. It just makes it just a little bit easier for that person to come to terms with their sexuality, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yeah, and of course you're talking about Missouri's Michael Sam, who announced that he's gay. He's a hopeful NFL player. And Jimmy, he announced that he's gay, and he received a standing ovation at the Mizzou basketball game. Let's take a listen to that. I mean, look at that. Michael Sam, and the way that his announcement has been received, does it signify a shift in this country, Jimmy?
Sure, absolutely. And this is a long time coming, or I guess a long time coming out, per se. Anytime you have someone that's prominent, and now obviously in the sports area, in the NFL, or soon to be in the NFL, this is a very big deal. The country has, if you look at the trend lines on marriage equality, on workplace discrimination, et cetera, the numbers have increased dramatically in the last decade, and that's going to continue to happen. Ellen comes out, Michael Sam comes out, et cetera. You know, when you watch Will and Grace on the TV every week, and you watch the Ellen show, gay people are in your home via your TV. It makes you more comfortable. It's assimilation, per se. We are not unusual people. Well, I might be a little bit unusual, but that's because I'm me, right? But the bottom line is we're not freaks of nature. We're just like everybody else. Yeah. Everybody knows somebody gay, and that's the whole key to making the whole thing a reality of having an open and inclusive society.
I'm curious, Jason, you're a political scientist. Are we at a watershed moment in this country?
No, because I don't think we can separate the issue of homosexuality from issues of class and race. And I think in many instances we have to remember that while the face of the LGBT community has been people like Ellen Page and has been people like Ellen DeGeneres, we still have to deal with the trans community. We still have to deal with the poor Latino workers who are being discriminated against. We have to remember that it's not just a matter of saying it's okay for people to be gay. It's okay for people to be gay when they don't have the resources, the money, and the television to back them up as well. I think this is still a question of how someone's class affects whether or not people are going to accept them.
Okay, we're going to blast through the must-reads with the big three after the break. Stay with us.